I was on this plane, just a regular guy flying out for a business trip. Nothing fancy, just a regional airline. One of those flights you don't expect much from, except maybe a free soda and a tiny bag of pretzels if you're lucky. The flight was supposed to be just a couple of hours, from one city to another. Everything started off normal. We boarded on time, which was a surprise because I swear every time I fly, there's always some kind of delay. But not this time. I found my seat, window seat, because I like to lean against the wall and try to catch some sleep. The plane wasn't full, which was nice. The seat next to me stayed empty, and I was silently celebrating the extra space. We took off, and I did my usual routine. Buckle up, nod off, and hope I wake up at landing. But this time, I couldn't really fall asleep. There was this uneasy feeling, like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I figured it was just nerves, or maybe too much coffee before the flight. Hours passed, or at least, I think they did. I watched a couple of movies on my tablet, listened to some music, and tried to sleep again. But sleep just wouldn't come. That's when I started noticing things, like the flight attendants seemed to be moving around a lot, but they weren't doing the usual stuff. They weren't serving drinks or snacks. They just kept walking up and down the aisle, looking at passengers, then whispering to each other. It was weird. I checked the time on my watch, and that's when the first real wave of confusion hit me. It felt like we should have been landing soon, but according to my watch, only an hour had passed since takeoff. That didn't make any sense. I looked out the window expecting to see city lights or something, but it was just clouds. Endless clouds. I tried to get the attention of one of the flight attendants, but they seemed to be deliberately avoiding my gaze. Finally, I managed to flag one down, and I asked, "Hey, how much longer till we land?" She gave me this smile, too wide to be comforting, and said, "Oh, not long now. Just sit back and relax." Her response was vague and did nothing to ease the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. I decided to try and distract myself with more movies, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I got up to stretch my legs and maybe use the bathroom, hoping a little walk would help me calm down. As I walked down the aisle, I noticed that everyone seemed too calm, like unnaturally calm. They were all just sitting there, some reading, some watching the screen in front of them, but no one was talking. No one was moving much. It was like they were all, I don't know, sedated or something. I reached the bathroom, did my business, and washed my hands, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, more tired than I should have been for a flight that was supposedly only an hour in. Shaking my head, I tried to clear the fog that seemed to be creeping around the edges of my thoughts. When I stepped out, I decided to check the flight information screen, the one that shows the map and the little airplane icon over where you're supposed to be. The screen was on, but it was just displaying the airline logo, nothing else. No map, no flight path, nothing. That's when panic really started to set in. I went back to my seat, trying to keep my breathing even, trying not to let the fear show. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who freaks out and causes a scene, but inside, my mind was racing, trying to figure out what was happening. I tried talking to the guy in the aisle seat across from me, just some small talk to see if he was feeling the same way. But he just smiled and nodded, then went back to his book. It was like he didn't even hear me. Time kept passing, or at least I thought it did. My watch now seemed to be moving too slowly, the minutes stretching out longer than they should. I watched a movie I knew was 2 hours long, but by the time it finished, my watch only showed 30 minutes had passed. I was officially freaking out now. I got up again, went to the flight attendant and asked, "Is there something wrong with the plane? Are we lost?" Again, that too wide smile. "Everything is fine, sir. Please return to your seat and enjoy the flight." But how could I enjoy the flight when it felt like we were stuck in some kind of time loop, flying over an endless sea of clouds with no destination in sight? I went back to my seat, feeling defeated and more scared than I'd like to admit. I looked out the window again, hoping to see something, anything, that would tell me where we were or what was happening. But there was nothing, just clouds, stretching out to the horizon, a never-ending blanket of white beneath us. And that's when the real fear set in, the kind of fear that makes your heart race and your palms sweat. What if this flight never ends? What if we're stuck here in this metal tube, flying to nowhere, forever? I tried to push those thoughts away, tried to tell myself I was just being paranoid. But as the hours ticked by, with no sign of landing, no change in the routine of the flight attendants, and no explanation for the weirdness of time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. And that's where I'm at now, typing this out on my phone, hoping that by sharing it, I can make sense of it, or at least find someone else who's experienced the same thing. Because right now, I'm on a plane ride that seems to be going on forever, and I have no idea how to get off. It's been, I don't know, hours, days, since I first started feeling like something wasn't right on this flight. Time's become this weird, stretchy thing that doesn't make sense anymore. My watch and the clock on my phone are pretty much useless now. They tick away seconds at a pace that feels both too slow and too fast, and it's messing with my head. I've tried talking to other passengers again, trying to see if anyone else is feeling this endless loop we seem to be stuck in. Most just give me a blank stare, or that same unnerving smile the flight attendants have been flashing. It's like they're all part of some bizarre club I didn't get an invite to, and it's freaking me out more than I want to admit. There was this one guy, though, sitting a few rows ahead of me. He looked off, like he was feeling the same thing I was. I caught his eye once and he quickly looked away, but not before I saw the panic there. It was a small comfort, seeing someone else who might be sharing this nightmare, but I couldn't get a chance to talk to him. Every time I tried to get up and walk over, a flight attendant would suddenly be there, asking me to return to my seat for some reason or another. I've started paying more attention to the flight itself, trying to find anything that might give me a clue as to what's going on. The flight path on the screens isn't showing up, like I mentioned before, but there's more. The announcements from the pilot have stopped completely. You know, those little updates they give about flight time remaining, or turbulence. Nothing. It's like the cockpit has gone silent. And the windows. This might be the part that's getting to me the most. Every time I look out, expecting to see something change, it's the same. Just clouds. But not normal clouds. These are thick, almost unnaturally so, and they don't move. It's like we're flying above a still ocean of white, and it's starting to feel claustrophobic, being surrounded by this endless, unmoving blanket. I've tried everything I can think of to break this cycle. I've watched movies, listened to music, tried reading, but nothing helps. It all just loops back to the start, like I'm stuck in some twisted version of Groundhog Day, but at 30,000 feet. Sleep has become my only escape, the only time I'm not painfully aware of the stagnant time. But even sleep feels weird here. It's restless and filled with dreams of being trapped in this plane, dreams that feel too real. I wake up disoriented, unsure of what's dream and what's this bizarre reality. At one point, I thought about trying to open the emergency exit. I know, crazy, right? But I was desperate, feeling like I needed to do something, anything, to break free from this. The thought was fleeting, though, because I knew it was a line I couldn't cross. Instead, I found myself wandering to the back of the plane, to the galley where the flight attendants hang out. I stood there, watching them for a while. They were chatting quietly among themselves, looking perfectly at ease. It was surreal, seeing them so relaxed when everything else felt so wrong. I cleared my throat, trying to get their attention, and when they looked at me, I saw it again. That smile. It was like they knew something I didn't, a secret they weren't willing to share. "Can I get some water?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Of course," one of them replied, handing me a plastic cup filled with water. I took it, our fingers brushing, and I swear there was a moment, just a split second, where her smile faltered, where I saw something else in her eyes. Fear, sadness, I couldn't tell, and before I could ask, the mask was back in place. I went back to my seat, sipping the water, feeling more isolated than ever. It's like I'm in a bubble, cut off from the rest of the world, from reality. And I can't help but wonder, what if I'm not the only one? What if this plane, this flight, is filled with people like me, trapped in their own bubbles of confusion and fear, unable to connect, unable to break free? The idea terrifies me more than I want to admit. The thought of being so close to others who are experiencing the same nightmare, yet being completely unable to reach them, to share this burden, it's almost too much to bear. So here I am, typing this out, a desperate attempt to connect, to find someone else who might be going through the same thing. If you're reading this, if you've experienced anything like what I'm describing, please, I need to know I'm not alone in this. Because right now, as I look out at the endless sea of clouds, as I feel the weight of the hours stretching into infinity, I'm starting to lose hope. I'm starting to wonder if this flight, this journey through a timeless void, will ever end. I don't know how much time has passed since I last wrote something down. The concept of time has become so distorted, so utterly meaningless in this place, that I've stopped trying to track it. My phone and watch are nothing more than accessories now, their screens and hands mocking me with their semblance of normalcy. After my last attempt to reach out, to find someone, anyone, who might be sharing in this endless flight, I sank into a kind of numbness. It's a survival mechanism, I guess, a way to protect what's left of my sanity in a situation that defies all logic and understanding. But something happened. Something that's forced me out of my stupor and back into the sharp, cold reality of my situation. It started with a change, a small one, but in the context of this never-ending flight, it was monumental. The clouds, they started to thin out. After countless hours of staring at the same unchanging view, the dense blanket of clouds below us began to break apart, revealing glimpses of land and sea. It was the first real change in the environment since this whole ordeal began, and it sparked a flicker of hope in my chest. With the change in scenery came a change in the passengers. It was subtle at first, a shift in the atmosphere, a sense of restlessness that hadn't been there before. People started looking around, whispering to each other, their movements hesitant but deliberate. It was like we were all waking up from a trance, slowly becoming aware of the oddity of our situation. I saw the man, the one who had caught my eye before, the one who seemed to share my sense of panic. He was standing in the aisle, looking around with wide, searching eyes. Our gazes met, and without a word, we both knew. We weren't alone in this. We made our way to each other, drawn by the mutual recognition of our shared nightmare. His name was Alex, and the relief in his voice was palpable as we quickly exchanged stories, confirming that we were both experiencing the same endless flight, the same distortions of time and reality. Together, we decided to confront the flight attendants, to demand answers. There was strength in numbers, even if it was just the two of us against the eerie calm of the crew. We approached them, our determination bolstering our courage. The confrontation was nothing like I expected. The moment we started asking questions, demanding to know what was happening, the facade dropped. The smiles vanished, replaced by expressions of genuine fear and confusion. They didn't have answers. They were just as trapped as we were, following orders from a cockpit that had ceased communicating hours, days, maybe even longer ago. The pilot's door was locked, impervious to our knocks and shouts. It stood as a barrier to the truth, to the answers we so desperately sought. The realization that the crew was not in control, that they were as much passengers on this endless flight as we were, was both a relief and a terror. We were all in this together, but that unity did not bring the answers or the end we craved. As we stood there, a group of confused, scared individuals at the front of the plane, a crackle came over the speakers. A voice, the pilot's voice, broke the silence. But it wasn't the reassurance or the explanation we had hoped for. It was a simple, chilling message. Prepare for landing. The announcement sparked a flurry of activity among the flight attendants, their training kicking in despite the uncertainty. Seats were upright, tray tables stowed, but the atmosphere was one of disbelief. Could this really be the end of our ordeal? The descent was unlike any I've experienced. It was slow, almost gentle, as if the plane itself was hesitant to rejoin the world below. And then, with a softness that belied the turmoil of our journey, we touched down. The landing was surreal. We taxied to the gate, a normal procedure that felt anything but normal. When the seatbelt sign dinged off, nobody moved. We were frozen, unsure of what we'd find when we disembarked. Would it be the same world we'd left? Had time passed us by? I was one of the first to stand up, driven by a need to see, to understand. Alex was right beside me, and together we stepped into the aisle, moving towards the exit. The door opened, and we were met with the sight of the airport, looking exactly as it should, as if nothing had happened. Stepping off the plane was like stepping into another reality. People were rushing by, caught up in their own lives, oblivious to the impossibility of what we had just experienced. I turned to Alex, and without needing to speak, we both understood. Whatever had happened on that flight, it had changed us. We had shared something beyond understanding, beyond the realm of normal experience. As I write this final part of my story, I'm still searching for answers. The flight is logged as having arrived on time, a mundane entry in the annals of air travel, but those of us on that plane know the truth. We experienced something unexplainable, a journey that defied the constraints of time and space, and that is my story of the endless flight.